Hello friends, and welcome to the Truth Booth. We're going to do something a little different starting today, and that's Ask Me Tuesdays. And this comes from a suggestion I got from a friend that it might be good to have people write in and ask questions that I can answer. Well, at first I thought, well, who wants to hear my answers and what do I have to say? But then I remembered that the reason I have the Truth Booth is because of all the women that I've met that have said that they don't really have people to ask questions to. And so I'm a grandma and I've lived a little bit of life, and maybe I can answer some of your questions, whether they're right answers or wrong answers. They'll be my answers. So I just set up a little table here, and I'm going to invite you to have a little cup of tea with me. Coffee is very overrated. I prefer tea because it just helps us to calm and slow down, and just a little art of having to put in our little milk and put in our sugar. So I'm going to pour you a little cup over here. And we're going to have a little cup of tea together in my little cup that I got in Italy, in the town where my grandma came from. So welcome to my home. And I have a little bucket over here that I've already collected questions in as I've asked people, what would you want to ask? So I'm going to draw a question out, and we're just going to take a few minutes to answer it. And I am a little nervous because this is putting me on the spot a little bit, but let's pull one out. Need my glasses. Oh, what do you think about millennials? Okay, that's a great starter question, isn't it? What do you think about millennials? Okay, well, have I been irritated with this generation of millennials? Sure. Have I been irritated with just about every generation that I've seen come and go? Sure. Was I irritated with my generation? Absolutely. Do I get irritated with myself? You bet. Okay. So what do I think about millennials? I think just like every generation that gets named, I feel for them because they're named, and then they have to live up under that name. I grew up in the hippie generation. There were a lot of names for us in that era. But every decade comes another era of a generation that we feel like we need to name. And most of the time it ends up a really negative thing that we place on that generation. Do the millennials have things that they need to work on? Absolutely. But if you look into it, you're going to see that the reason why each generation is the way they is because of the way that they were raised, the environment that they were raised in, that kind of causes them to swing against it, usually what they were raised in, and to try to make it different. That's admirable. That's so admirable. And if you look at the millennials, and if you have any that are in your life that you really get to know and talk to, this generation of millennials has come from a really difficult upraising. You know, they're the result of a lot of our sin and a lot of our wandering around and not knowing what we're doing. They come from broken homes. They come from parents who were addicts. They come from homes where church maybe wasn't a biblical, pleasant place to be. They're with a lot of hypocrisy, and they've seen that. So there's kind of a swing against that with these kinds of things in every generation, and I think the millennials are no different. So one thing that I've tried to apply to my life, and believe me, it's difficult, is the scripture that tells us that we need to take care of the log in our own eye before we try to pick the splinter out of our brother or sister's eyes. And if each of us look at our decade and our generation, there's a lot of logs we need to work on. And I think that should maybe take up more of our time than trying to decide what we think about millennials. But let me tell you some of the amazing things that I see in millennials. We have millennials on staff with us here in Ecuador. And one thing that I do see is that they are a people about causes. They are commissioned to purchase things that they know are having a double help to somebody. They are waiting for that opportunity to just give their lives to something. They truly are. The ones that are making crazy decisions because God asked them to do something, and so they're going to do it. Those are the wonderful things I see about millennials. Maybe we don't agree with the way they go about what they do, but my goodness, when you look back at yourself at that age, do you agree with the way that we went about what we did? Sometimes the younger generation can teach us a lesson because they see truth and they want to act on it. They want to do something about it. Somewhere along the line, I think we lose a little bit of that passion. And so I want to surround myself with the younger generation to keep me motivated. So what do I think about millennials? I think they're not a whole lot different than my generation or the next or the next or the next. They get tagged, they get judged. And I want to just be a part of embracing millennials and learning from them and walking with them through what they need to do through their stages of adulthood. So why don't you join me and do that? Let's kind of work on taking the log out of our own eye before we begin to pick the little sliver out of somebody else's eye. And I want to say to you millennials, I just read a great article about the generation coming up called Generation Z, Gen Z, and you're going to find that you're probably going to be pretty irritated with them just like everybody else was with you. Just keeps going round. Okay, so that's the first Ask Me Tuesday, and I'll see you again next Tuesday. Bye-bye.